no matter what success looks like, it is that I have always been an athlete. I have always been a competitor. And no matter what level of football that I got to, it was a data point that I wanted to leverage when I was done.
Welcome back for another episode of Inside Moves. We're here at the Slam headquarters in New York City, sitting down with Andrew Hawkins. Andrew went from the MAC at Toledo all the way to the NFL. He then was the head of business development for Uninterrupted. He's the NFL analyst for ESPN's Get Up, and he is also the co-founder of StatusPro, a virtual reality studio with the only NFL license. All right, so we were talking off camera about your analyst career and the crazy resume that you have for being only 38 years old, playing 6 years in the NFL, and accomplishing so much after. We'll get into all that stuff, but when I look at everything you've done, the first thing that stands out to me is this dude was in the MAC, playing at Toledo.
Shout out to the MAC.
Shout out to the MAC. MAC's awesome. We can talk about that too. In the MAC, not a super high draft prospect.
No, that's an understatement.
I mean, you're playing on both sides of the ball, doing good stuff.
Yeah.
So, clearly it worked out.
I'm like the worst version of Travis Hunter that you could imagine.
That kid's special, man.
Yeah, he is.
He's special.
Yeah.
So we got Travis Hunter mini, but not getting the NFL looks you want. You do that reality TV show, right, with Michael Irvin. That still doesn't get it done.
Yep.
But you love ball so much that you go continue your career in the CFL, win a championship, which I don't underscore that at all. Like that, any championship you win is
ships, man.
Yeah, the best things in life, and then it all works out. You get your shot in the league, and then you take advantage of it. And I don't know what the average NFL career is, but it's not 6 years. You stuck for 6 years.
Yeah.
So let's start there. Talk me through that. How.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I come from a small town in Pennsylvania. It's outside of Pittsburgh, so football is a really big deal. I come from a family of football players, and so naturally I gravitated to it. And I think for me, business has always been an important part of my proposition. It's who I am as a person. I enjoy the process of building something from nothing. I enjoy the process of development, putting pieces together, figuring out white spaces and blind spots that you can take advantage of and leverage. And so in my football career, I do think that's relevant, because when I was being told what was possible and what was not, I'm like, there has to be a way. And so I would literally put these strategies together, no matter what the goal was, whether it's trying to get an agent, trying to get teams to look at me, figuring out the process of, okay, what would it take for an NFL team to look at a 5'7", 5'8" receiver in this climate of football, and so alongside that, also wanting to always work in sports business. So when I got done playing in college, you're right, I didn't get picked up. I had a couple of tryouts for NFL with the Browns as a rookie mini camp. Some CFL teams didn't get signed, arena and indoor teams, and they told me I wasn't good enough for those either. And so I was kind of transitioning into the other side, and I actually started my professional career as an intern for the Detroit Lions as a scout.
Wow.
And so I'm scouting for the Lions after I get done with my college football career. And I'm like, man, I think I can play with these guys. I still feel even in this world where I am now a clipboard in a front office and talking about salary caps and cutting people and, why this makes the most sense in people's, from a contractual standpoint, I'm like, I still think I can play with these guys.
Yeah.
And so they offered me a full-time job as a scout. But it was this fork in the road where I had to decide whether I was going to take it, which was my ultimate goal to eventually be a GM in the NFL at the time, or still chase this dream. And I didn't have anything going on at the time, but I was I just still feel there's more ways for me to figure this out. And so I decided to keep it going, and everything just started to put itself into place. I just kind of worked. I kind of kept the faith. I kept trying to research, and whether it's sending 30 audition tapes to this reality show or making my own highlight tapes for YouTube and sending out to CFL teams while I'm on the show just in case I don't win it. All these little pieces put me in position to kind of continue the track that I'm going. And, where I ended up now is because, me and my co-founder at StatusPro, Troy, we always say like this is a culmination of our life's work. That front office experience, my experience coaching, my experience again trying to put the pieces together, build a brand for myself, help other people build a brand, my exposure to the agency side and all these things kind of like uniquely positioned me and myself for what I do now in sports and entertainment and technology.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. It's interesting too, like the balance of, I met somebody yesterday who knows you, Jack Jensen from Rec League.
Jack,
he's awesome.
He is.
And he's like, what are you up to lately? Like, what's up next? And I said, I had you coming on the show tomorrow. And one of the things he said about you was he's a tremendous future caster. Mm. And then he talked about how like you saw what could happen and like what the next step was through football and then beyond, right? Yeah. And we both kind of looked at each other and we were like, yeah, like that's one thing, but then to go execute and sit on that long road, waiting for the next step.
Yeah,
probably feeling crazy at points.
Most of the points.
Yeah,
most of the points, and that's the tough part. Is like, it was now it's man, you played in the NFL. You were 6 years. It was great. This is just a piece of it. But like in that time, when I was trying to make it happen, like people were literally laughing at that idea. The fact that I turned down being an NFL scout for nothing, with nothing else, seemed crazy. But to me, there was a calculation of like, hey, I still think there's lanes that I haven't, given a shot to make this thing happen. And I think that's a tremendous compliment from Jack, because it is like, as you put things together, you have to be able to see the future. Yeah. Like you can't think in the now. You can't, like a lot of companies, a lot of people will see certain trends and try to jump on. Mm-hmm. And for me, by the time you see it, it's too late. Mm-hmm. Like you have to be able to find trajectory, like use the, whatever foundation or starting point of the past, be able to say, okay, here's where we are, here's where it started. You have to be able to fill in all the gaps that people can't see to put yourself on a trajectory that makes sense. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, totally. So how do you find that balance? Because I think you're 100% right. Like the people that go down these crazy paths and then ultimately climb the hill, they're really good at balancing like I'm here right now and I'm present. Yeah. But they're also good at like future casting. Like you said, like this is the path to the top of the hill. I think something I struggled with as an athlete was I was always looking at the top of the hill. Yeah. And it overwhelmed me and I wasn't always super present, Yeah. So like how have you balanced that throughout your whole life?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's a way to answer that where it's makes perfect sense, because I think I've probably struggled with that as well. Yeah. I think a lot of times, to your point, it's always interesting to hear people say, oh, you've accomplished so much. Mm-hmm. And I know that I have, and I know there's like really cool things that I've been able to do and been blessed to be a part of. But I think a lot of times when I get there to those moments, I've played it back in my head for so long, so much earlier than everybody else. It never feels like, man, it's accomplished. It feels like, this was inevitable. This is what the plan was for. Yeah. This is how the execution works. So I think that's what I'm good at, is like, I can set a goal, and if it's 10 years, if it's 5 years, if it's 20 years, I am, I have an appetite for delayed gratification in that way. Mm-hmm. And every day I will operate as if it is a fact. So when it comes to fruition and everybody else is celebrating it, it was a fact to me 10 years ago. Yeah. It was a fact to me 5 years ago. And so there is some version of that where it may not feel like you're present, because you're living in a place where other people have not seen that reality yet. Mm-hmm.
Totally. What was it like being in the CFL?
It was awesome. Yeah. Loved it. Yeah. Loved it. Montreal is like my favorite city in North America. It was really cool to kind of, embrace the culture that is there. It for me, a kid who hadn't been a lot of places, to be able to go to a different country and experience that culture and experience all the different cultures of people and play football, be paid. Like it's not big contracts, but hey, it was the biggest contract I had to that point. But then also just like people who were playing truly for the love of it, whether that are players that are, 35 years old plus, or coaches that had coached in the NFL and come back to Canada. There was just a purity to it that I truly enjoyed. And I don't think I would have played in the NFL had I not gone and played in Canada for 2 years, because it taught me how to be a professional, to play against grown men who were trying to feed their families and It was not you're not on scholarship. Everybody doesn't get to stay. There's a competition every single day, and how you fare in that competition, how you balance that mentally, determines what your everyday life is like. And that is a process that is hard to digest at first. And for me, being in the CFL positioned me for my NFL career.
I think about this a lot because I'm a baseball player and I played in the minor leagues. And college baseball is amazing for me because, you know, there's one goal. Like, we're all trying to get to the show, but like we're here for 4 years and we want to win and we do everything together. And these are my brothers. And it's the best. It's all about winning. And then you get to minor league baseball and it's like, damn, I'm competing with all these dudes who are my teammates and we're all trying to get out of this level and get to the next level. Was it like that in the CFL?
Oh, yeah. I think so. I mean, it depends. There's like certain, like, there's guys that go to the CFL and they're done with that, you know, because it's daunting for a lot of people to be in that rat race, to be in a constant competition, to be signed, move to Kansas City, be there for 4 months, your family being excited about you being a Chief, and you get cut, and now you're in Arizona, and you're in Arizona for 2 days, and then they cut you, or you go to Miami, and you're like, that is a lot on people. And you do that over so many years. A lot of these fringe roster players, they go to Canada and they're like, oh, this is stability. There was no off season at the time. So it was truly a 4-month season. As soon as the championship happened, the season ended, we'll see you in training camp. So it's like, it's easy living. It's not as much money. It's not the notoriety, but I don't have to be chasing the same way that I did an NFL roster.
Right.
So some guys get there and they're good with that. But for a lot of the young guys like myself, I had never gotten a true NFL opportunity. So I had tunnel vision every single day, and I made it known, not like in a, you know, a boastful or a conceited way, but at the same time, it was whenever the contract talks would happen, they're like, hey, we want to re-sign you. I'm like, I'm going to the NFL. And like, what are you talking about? You don't even start here. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, I am here for a mission.
Yeah. I'm
going to accomplish that mission. And so I'm going to pass up on opportunities that may seem, you know, like they make more sense to somebody else, but I'm laser focused on this thing. And there's a lot of players like that, but it's hard to pass on some of those, that stability to say, hey, okay, the NFL is great, but they're offering me $150,000 and that's pretty good. And I don't know if I'll go to the NFL and get cut. That just wasn't my mindset.
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm
here for one reason and one reason only.
Yeah. Tunnel vision. I love that. That's awesome. How about Toledo? You were in the MAC. I mean, the MAC was before my time of when like I was like the MACtion was a thing, you know, on Wednesday nights. But the MAC, I think, is they're genius for what they did for these Wednesday night games. It's extremely relevant in college football. If you're a real football person, you love MACtion. Was it like that when you were there? Like, was there shine on it?
I think it was coming around to that. You know, the MAC is obviously still Division I football. And how recruiting works is a lot like business. It's
totally.
It's a snapshot of a certain point, and where you are in your development determines where you can play. So I had a ton of players that I played college football with that went to the NFL and had long careers, right? But we're guys that didn't have a bunch of scholarships because I might be a short receiver. They might be an undersized tackle. They might be a little slower than you want from a cornerback, right? But it's very competitive. It was fun. You got to feel like you owned a certain day of the week, right? Like Wednesday, Tuesday night games sounded crazy.
So that existed back then.
Yeah, it did. It was like kind of starting up. That was when it was really kind of take shape that way. And in this world in 2024 where, I mean, we give you Thanksgiving games, we give you Black Friday games, we give you Christmas games, we give you Saturday games, we give you Sunday games, Monday night football. There's going to be football every day of the week is football. It kind of started with that. To be like, well, if somebody will tune into Toledo versus Central Michigan, like imagine if we put the blockbuster football on broadcast. So it was great. It was competitive. It was really cool. There is like a fraternity when you play in the NFL of guys that played in the MAC. You kind of know what that meant. It meant like, hey, the facilities we weren't at Notre Dame. We were making it do with what we had, but we get up here on the main stage and guess what? You went to Florida State? Awesome. Your locker's right next to mine. So here we go. That. You know?
Yeah, it's a blue collar grit to it.
That's it, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hell yeah. So like how about that day when you finally got the call and you're like, wow, here's my shot.
Yeah.
And it's the Bengals, right, is where you start. And that's a good team.
Yeah, so I grew up a Bengals fan. So the crazy
Wow.
part is my older brother played 9 years in the NFL, and we grew up outside of Pittsburgh. So my whole family are Pittsburgh Steelers fans, except for me and my brothers, because our older brother got to the NFL, and we just were Bengals fans. So I grew up a Bengal fan, and so you're putting all this work in, trying to bring the future to life, trying to do something that nobody sees, and every day. And I mean, it is a lonely place for people who see something that nobody else sees.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and people weren't wrong for thinking that I was crazy to try to make this my reality.
Yeah.
For me devoting everything I had into it. I remember people asking me, "Why are you working out every day?" Like literally, arena teams told you weren't big enough to play. Like that's not how this works. You don't have an agent. Teams aren't scouting you. You're not on anybody's radar. So to continue to wake up at 6 a.m., go to the gym, and train for 5 hours with nothing, no indicator of success, you do feel crazy. And it was a very lonely time. So that first contract offer that I got, I broke down, as you would imagine. It felt like the pursuit of happiness moment.
Yeah.
And I was on an airplane, actually. I was boarding a plane to go work out for the St. Louis Rams, and the Bengals called me and offered me a contract on the way there. So I literally, for a 2-hour flight, cried the entire time, right? Because it was like 3-4 years of feeling like a lunatic. Now nobody thinks that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's a weird thing for me because I still feel that, right? Like, yes, I'm a former NFL player now and NFL team captain and played for these teams, and I'm on ESPN, but I can still vividly remember when everybody was like, yo, this is not possible to do. And so even now it's hard for me to balance those feelings.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't register that way, but it was an awesome moment.
Yeah. Our head guy in college he was just a workhorse, man. This dude was disciplined. He led by example, really demanded a lot out of us.
Yeah.
But was loving and everything,
Yeah.
And he would show us videos of dudes winning chips or whatever, their pursuit of happiness moments,
Yeah.
And he would make us watch them and be like, don't you want to feel this? Like, this is the one moment that's the result of years of effort, and then it all comes out of you because you made it, you did it. And I just love to hear that, and I love to hear you going through it. And I can relate, man. I played independent minor league baseball. So it's kind of equivalent, to the CFL, right? Like we're the minor leaguers who didn't get picked up. Like there's 7 minor league teams in every organization, and we didn't get picked up. We can't play on any of those. So now we're on these independently owned leagues, and people think you're crazy. It's like, what are you doing, man? Go get a job. But so these guys there, they see a path, and it's a damn hard path. But dudes do make it, And stories like yours, they're important to hear, I think, for a lot of dudes out there who feel crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an unrealistic confidence that you have to have, or like a perception of yourself and where you see yourself.
Yeah.
And also, it's not that I try to be very clear that where I was not ready to play in the NFL at the time. Again, people aren't crazy for telling me that I was not an NFL player at that time. I wasn't, but I wasn't forecasting where I was at that moment. I'm like, well, I can be if I work this way.
Yeah.
If I put this amount of time in, if I give it this amount of focus.
Yeah.
Because I will continue to get better. And as long as you are getting better and getting closer to that goal, there was nothing that was going to stop me from continuing that belief, and me feeling like I was going to be one of those success stories. Because if it happens for somebody else, it could happen for me. That's just the way I think. If it's ever been an example that it's a realistic opportunity for somebody, whether it was a 1 in a million chance, I'm going to put myself in position to be number 2.
Yeah.
And there is no better payoff than that.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude. So in the NFL now, I mean, if you play in the NFL, you play in the MLB, you play in the NBA, you're basically, it's like being on the executive team at Google. It's like you are at a Fortune 100 company.
Yeah.
The expectations are crazy high.
Yep.
Everybody is an extremely skilled professional. There's so much to it. The systems that are in place, like the attention to detail. What was that like? What lessons from operating at that level have kind of stuck with you today? Are there any people there you're just like, wow, this is what professionalism is? Like, this is excellence, Yeah,
there were so many people. I got to play with a guy named Joe Thomas, who was a left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, and he owns the NFL record for the most consecutive snaps without missing a play. It's 10,363.
Wow.
And he is a perfect example of what it takes to operate at that level. And it's showing up every day as if it's game day.
Yeah.
Right. I think the misconception is like, oh, guys practice and you show up Sundays and like that's when you really got to output. And it's the same in college. It's like, oh, Saturday's a big game, so maybe practice isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Or maybe weightlifting is not that big of a deal. Or maybe study tables when you're doing your homework is not that big of a deal. For the guys that make it in the NFL and have success, and what I determine as success is not just being there, because honestly, if you're 6'5" and you run a 4.2 40 and you're 230 pounds, you probably don't got to be that skilled to be able to make it there, because there's potential in that you see. But actual success is saying, okay, here's where you project to be. Did you beat that? How many levels above expected did you take it? And so for guys that are successful at that level, they are wired different. Yeah. They are wired with the mentality that every day is a game day. Everything matters to the best athletes. Everything matters to the people who are mentally strong. And that's what it takes. There's like a level of detail and how meticulous you have to be. And literally every step that you take on the field and everything that affects it off of it. And that is my time. That is my sleep. That is what I eat. That is when I travel. Yeah. That is when I don't. That is what I consume. And as an NFL player, if you want the best output, the closer you are to being that optimal, the better you are, because it is hard competition there. Yeah. And everybody is great. Yeah. And the longer you're there, the harder it is to maintain. And that's something that you can take specifically into business, right? And there is a lot of things that I'm probably not the best person to talk about. Like, I probably can't talk to you about work-life balance as much as somebody else can. But I do think startup world is a lot like being an athlete. Totally. Like, yeah, not everybody needs to start a company. Not everybody wants to start a company. Not everybody wants to be that level of success. Not everybody wants to play in the NFL, that play sport. Maybe you just do it for fun. But for the ones who want to be elite, if you wake up early and you stay late and you work more and harder than everybody else, you have an advantage. That was an advantage that I had as a player, and I think it's an advantage that I've carried into my post, athletic career. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about it at JDS, and we invest in sports. We're all former athletes, and we have such an appreciation for dudes who have done really hard things at high levels in athletics like you, because it's like the list is it's the work ethic. I think the other thing is like the ability to take lumps. Like, I was talking to this guy yesterday, works at Slam, awesome dude, Josh, and his nephew was signed on to play at Illinois, 17 years old, tears his UCL, he's got a scholarship coming, and the coach has to call him and be professional and say, sorry, it's not going to work now. Yeah. Pulls a scholarship. Now this kid's got to figure out his career again. Kid's 17 years old, And it's like, where else? Don't get me wrong. There's hardships and challenges for everybody out there, but like, there's just this like built-in arena that these kids are going through at a young age, where it's like, this is growing you up fast, Yeah. And sports, I can't speak enough to like how important I think it is for, if you want to be excellent, you have talent or not. Like, I think all kids should be in something competitive like that to learn these lessons, Yeah.
I agree. The teamwork aspect of it, the accountability aspect of it, the ability to work with people for a common goal, but also keeping in mind what you have individually and what your focus is. And to your point, like, this is to play in the NFL. It started for me at 9 years old. At 9 years old, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I was going to do it. I would tell anybody who asked me. And by doing that, it made me immune to what everybody else's perspectives were. Because if I say I'm going to do something and you say, Hawk, no, you're not. Well, I'm like, well, either you're right or I'm right. And I believe me way more than I believe you. So guess whose opinion doesn't matter to me anymore? Yeah. Clearly you're wrong. Yeah. Right? And so over time, when you get into those moments, and especially like to your reference of the kid 17 years old and he has an injury, like that's a tough situation to be in. But it's like you have to dig in a way like, how does it drive you? And so it would benefit me in times like that, because I've been in that situation multiple times, to where I didn't seek the validation from other people that I was on the right track.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a beauty to my inner monologue being the most trusted voice, because I can trick myself into believing I can do anything.
That's what I think I struggled with, is like tricking myself to like buy
tough.
in. It's tough.
It's tough, man.
I'm getting better
It's
at
tough.
it, you know. But like that's like, things were easy for me. It was different for me and you. I was 6'3" when I was like 14.
Yeah,
shit was too easy for me. I think.
Did you feel like, because that's an interesting concept? Did you feel like, because everybody probably said, "Oh, you're going to be this, you're going to be that," did it feel like you had to live up to that? Did it feel harder for you?
No, I don't think it was that. I think I thought I was working hard, but also kind of assumed like I'm the golden child. Like I was like, I'm so good. And I would look around.
It was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, it was a foregone conclusion to me. Like I'm going to continue this like moderate amount of like, I'm committed to this, which I thought was fully committed, but didn't really have an understanding of like how hard I'm
coming for you, bro.
You're coming for me
every day.
The dude that's undersized, that has the same goal as me,
dude,
it's just not coming as easy for him right now. He's coming for me every day, and over the next 4 years, that's going to matter a ton. I didn't have an appreciation for that, you know?
I mean, I would have you posted on my vision board.
Exactly.
There was a kid that I played in a high school all-star game. His name was Michael Cox. He was a fullback. And at the time, I didn't have anywhere to go to college. He was going to, I believe, Georgia Tech, and he was an incredible player. Yeah. We're in this all-star game. I'm a corner. He's a big fullback, and he runs me clean over in this all-star. Like, it was like clean over, runs me over, and I was so embarrassed by it. Nobody else cared, because it was like physics, right? Like, this dude's huge. I'm tiny. He runs me over. And fast forward to when I get to the NFL in a preseason game, he's on the Falcons. And he has no idea that I'm sitting here with this rage of 8 years about to be like,
wait, what's this dude's name?
His name was Michael Cox. He was such an incredible player. He was from Pennsylvania, went to Georgia Tech, was on the Falcons. And I run down on this kickoff, and I am like bat out of hell, like everything I have in my 5'8" frame. And of course, he's the lead blocker, and I take it on, boom, then make the tackle. Like, I run through his block, and he's so much bigger than me. And I'm sure it just looked at like, yo, dude, you're letting this 5'8" kid like not be pancaked, and you take him on. But again, to your point, I'm thinking about this damn near weekly of this moment, and it builds up, you know? And so for athletes, like you said, that are successful, I would have the guys that are ranked ahead of me. I can name them off from high school that got the offers that I didn't get, or got the combine invites, or got the all-star game invites. And so that mentality of like, you are either keeping your lead or you are losing your lead. Like, you are expanding the lead or you're losing it. There is no in between. Yeah. There is no status quo.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I wish I had an appreciation for earlier. And like it took dudes like you catching up, kicking me in the teeth to wake me up to it, you know?
Yeah.
But like, it's just hard to, and I have a younger sister, and things are kind of easy for her too sometimes. Yeah. And I try and instill it in her, but it's so hard to get these things through to a kid until they live and they feel it, you know, until they feel it. Yeah. It's very interesting to see, like, everybody's got their own development story, and they're all different, you know? Like, I can look back and like look at the crazy high school rankings, like, oh man, I was ranked so high. Was that good or bad for me? The dude ranked right before me and the dude ranked right below me. They made the big leagues. So like they figured out it, you know? So like everybody's got a different makeup and a different story. But I think the lessons that you're talking about right here, like, ring true for the whole lot, you know? Like the same things work for everybody. You just got to find them.
That's it, man. Yeah. And also, it's a cliche. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, for yourself, for anybody, like, somebody may have accomplished this goal, right? But it's from the big picture, what does that look like? And that's also what I'm great at. Yeah. I will change the goal in a blink of an eye. Like, okay, I wanted to get drafted too. That guy got drafted, cool. You beat me here, we'll see you in 3 years. Yeah. 3 years, you might still be on a roster and I might not. I'll see you in 5 years. Yeah. Right? Our careers might be over. Okay. We'll see what you're doing 5 years after you get done playing. That level of competition, that level of continuing on, just getting better and depositing every day, like, I don't know what those two guys are doing. They're probably great guys. They're probably living life and not thinking about those kind of things. But for people like me, I'm like, all right, well, let's get a snapshot in 2030 and see which career I would pick. You know, and I'm trying to work to make sure when I line it up, I still want to do what I did. You know, no matter what happened at the beginning stages, or whether I was slow to get to the league, or maybe if my career didn't last as long as somebody else. I'm not a Super Bowl winner. I'm not a Pro Bowler. I'm not trading what I've built for anybody else's story.
Yeah, you're on to the next thing anyways.
I'm on to the next thing, and there's still a long way to go.
Bill Belichick on to Cincinnati.
That's it, baby. On to Cincinnati. On to Cincinnati.
I love
exactly.
That. Do you know Adam Brenneman? He's a college football analyst. Young dude. He's like my age. He's like 29. But he had a similar like anecdote when he came on. I had him on as a guest. He's a good friend of mine. But he had knee injuries, and he was All-American, freshman All-American at Penn State. Then Jasicki comes in when he hurts his knee. It's like, damn, I might have to get out of here. So he leaves, goes to UMass, and ends up being a All-American tight end there. Knee keeps him out of the NFL. And like this dude, like some people say like, oh, injuries ended it for me. Like this dude, like, you can just look at it. It's proofs in the pudding. Like injuries ended it for this dude. But he talks about like, he's like, that really motivated me, where like my friends were making it and it all got ripped away. And that lit the fuel for his media career, where he's just growing like crazy and onto. He's like you know, he's got 5 irons in the fire, and he's crushing it on all fronts. And he found that motivation, which is
dope,
cool.
Man.
Yeah,
that's dope.
So how about you touched on it a little bit, like, and I think that like, this is a good segue into business too, because it's similar, where you have the appreciation for the individual goal, but also taking into account the collective. And the NFL is weird, man. And all professional sports are weird in the sense that, you know, you're out there making all this money and you have to take care of yourself. But at the end of the day, like, it's only fun if we're winning, you know? And like that's actually what we're getting paid for.
Yeah. The money is fun too.
The money is fun. Don't get me wrong. You know, and you got to take care of both. But
I don't want to.
So how was that? You know, like when you're in a clubhouse, locker room, there's 100 dudes in there. And it's the NFL. You bounce around a couple organizations. I know you were like Patriots for a little bit, but you got to like taste a couple different flavors. Do you think that the NFL as a whole is really out there to win, or is it kind of like I'm a contractor, and I got to do good work for my resume? You know?
I would compare it to a company in the sense of Joe Thomas, again, is a good example because he's had the most consecutive snaps. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I believe he only had one winning season. In his career. And he was also a part of a 1-15 season. He was a part of 0-16 season. He was a part of 2-win seasons, 3-win seasons, 4 wins, everything in between. He never played in a playoff game in his entire career. So I reference that because the collective goal was never met. It was never there. But the question of why the collective goal was never met was never because we need to better play from our left tackle. So his department inside this company was a high performer from day one to the last day that he left. And in the NFL, yes, you are independent contractors. I would have likened it more to, you are the director of your department within the company. And it is your job to make sure that when the company doesn't reach its goals, they don't point to your department and say it's because you didn't do what you needed to do. So whether I'm running marketing in the organization, I want you to point to marketing and say, well, marketing was top tier. You know, look at the amount of engagement that we get on everything that we do, the PR that we've gotten, the way we've been able to convert users and, communicate a product that's hard to communicate. And that's what it's like to be an NFL player. So I've always attacked it. Like, I have a standard on the name of the back of my jersey that needs to make sure it rings true no matter where Hawkins is a wide receiver or Hawkins works for a company. And I've prided myself on that. And I think the best players also take that approach that, whether we're a Super Bowl winning team or not, you're not going to get a different Andrew Hawkins. You're going to get the same guy no matter what, no matter what the record is, no matter what point of the year it is, no matter what year I'm in my career. If it's in the tank, I'm emptying it, right? And I think not every NFL player thinks that way. But it is the best way to turn both a team into a winning team, but also make sure you maximize the amount of money you can make, because this is still a business. And it's not like, that's not a bad thing for players to want to make the most money that they can, but you make the most money by being an asset to the strategy that they've put together to be a winner. You know, so there is a kind of what I would call a shared prosperity in those two goals.
So now you are, you know, a founder, right? Like you're running a business. You were around Bill Belichick. You know, how long were you there? You were there for
Months.
not too long. Months.
Yeah. I went for a literal cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee. Yeah. That was like the
it,
end.
and I was like, I'm good.
So I wanted to ask, who
I'm good here.
Who were the best, because I look at it like the head coach, especially in college organizations. Like these guys are CEOs. Like who were the best ones looking back on that you kind of were like, okay, now it's not just about the name on the back of the jersey. Yeah, it's like I'm looking down on these different departments, right? And I'm trying to lead at the head.
Yeah, Bill Belichick, the environment with the New England Patriots. I mean, it is like nothing you've ever seen. Like, it is from the moment you step in. And I have a notebook somewhere, because actually I was there. I think I signed in May, maybe early May or late April, and ended up retiring before training camp. Knee hurt, and I'm like, dude, I'm over it. I'm ready to do other
the body
things.
At some point.
Yeah, it was like I'm taking up spots from somebody else that actually has more of the heart for this than I did at 32 years old. But I had a notebook that I would take notes on everything in New England. So like the moment you walk in, the first thing you see is all the rings in the window. Yeah. And that's like intentional, because it's immediately to show you this is what we're here for. Yeah. Nothing else matters. This is like we have one goal. If it is not about this, we're probably not going to be talking about it. You walk in the hallway and Bill Belichick might be on the other end, and it might be 40 yards and he might not say a word to you, and it's just you two in the hallway. Like, yeah, I mean, it's just the conversations there were about how do we get first downs. It wasn't about how your kid's doing. Yeah. It's not about like, man, you know, how was your off? No, it's we're here for football. We talk about football. Everybody works like they're an undrafted free agent, and it is an intense environment compared to the places that I was. You know, and it's different in each place. So I would say Bill Belichick, and that takes a trust, that takes obviously an experience and the proof that you have the ability to turn things into success. Yeah. That is built over time, that not a lot of coaches can even have a tenure that long to build that kind of environment. Other coaches that I loved were Kyle Shanahan, who was my offensive coordinator. And it was like the first time, and I've had some good coaches, but like you always feel, it's like anything, when you get around greatness, you know it. You see it. It looks different. You might not have been able to pinpoint it prior to your exposure to it, but the moment that it's there, you know, like this is different. That was Kyle Shanahan and the way that he approached being an offensive coordinator, because he was a master at making sure all the collective goals of each individual laddered up to the goal that he wanted. So it wasn't about like, I want a great offense. 99% of offensive coordinators say, I want a great offense. I want my offense to be the best offense in the league. I wanted to throw for this many yards. I wanted to have this many yards per carry, which is great, cool. But each player has individual statistics. They have like individual goals. Maybe a guy's just trying to make the team. Maybe there's a guy trying to get a second contract. There might be a guy trying to prove that he's not over the hill. There might be a running back trying to, again, showcase his talents because he's headed into free agency. And I think Kyle Shanahan did an incredible job because, you know, he would have these speeches that he would do the day before games that, I mean, your hair would stand up on your arm, because he would say, we go through the whole week and it was hard as hell because he's a very hard coach that makes sure he gets the most out of you. And then the night before the game, he would put this highlight tape on of each player throughout the season. And he'd say stuff like, Hawk, when you came into this season, I told you I needed you to be the best slot in this damn league. And what did you show me? Exactly that. And he had this highlight tape of me coming out of the slot, punching down a safety, taking something the distance. And he was like, not only are you the best damn slot in the league, you're one of the only players ever 5'8" or under to be an X receiver because you're so damn. And it was like, you get juiced up and it had like, yes, I'm trying to be the best. Yeah. But only as it ladders up to what Kyle's vision is for the offense. Yeah. And that is rare. That's what a good leader does. Yeah. They can align the goals of every individual to make sure that when we have success as a company, or when I have success as a founder or a leader or a head coach, that everybody feels like we all took a step forward. It's never great when you feel like the guy in head, he's the only person or she's the only person that gets to taste the success. Everybody needs to feel like they're getting closer to whatever their goal is. And so as a leader of an organization or a business, it's important to let people voice that. I need to know what you care about. I need to know where you're trying to get to, because as I built a plan for the company, for the group, for the team, I want to make sure that whenever we reach it, whether it's here, whether it's somewhere else, you feel like, okay, you just helped me get closer to where I want to get to, as well as I helped you get closer to where you wanted to get to.
The football team is crazy, like you said, intense. I like what you had to say about Kyle Shanahan, because he's also making it fun. Like, he's celebrating wins.
Oh, yeah.
Now when you're in something like StatusPro, and how many people work at StatusPro?
With full-time and contract, we're probably in the 45 range.
Okay, so you have a team. You have
for sure.
You have an organization. And I saw this when I left sports, where like my coach studied Bill Belichick. Like he implemented the leadership council, like all the things that Bill, like he wanted to know everything, like you keep in a notebook. I don't know if Bill wrote a book or what, but he knew everything about the dude. And that's how I was raised. Like this was my like second dad, and like I loved it, the intensity. But then I got into the real world, and JDS Sports is like, we are super competitive, and like we are striving for big things.
Absolutely.
But we have partners, we have other companies that we invest in. And I'm like looking under the hood of stuff, and I'm like, does this intensity like freak people out, and is it too much at times? I like what like Kyle's doing in the sense of like, this all is intense and it matters, and like you need to understand your role, and then we're gonna like celebrate your wins and hype you up and make it fun, So how do you, now at StatusPro with 45 people? I think recruiting is a big thing. Like you want to get the right people in the door, but how do you do that balance of like, okay, like we want to build world-class products, but like, do I have the access to people that just want to be this intense all the time? I don't know. It seems like a challenge.
No, I mean, it is a challenge. And I don't think that you need everyone to be as intense as you are, right? I think it's an equation. Whenever you're scouting a player, and I'm going to continue to make analogies of football because this is where
I'm the same way with baseball,
we're sports, baby.
Yeah.
So, anyway, when you're scouting a player, he might be 6'3", 215, right? And it's like, man, he has good height. He has a great catch radius. He has a target that a quarterback can see. He's probably great with contested catches. There's a lot of benefit to that, And then when you have a receiver who's 5'8", it's not going to be the same thing. They're not going to look the same. Right? But this guy might be the most intense competitor I've ever seen. Not only that, his quickness probably creates more separation than the 6'3" guy, which, you're not as big a target, but they're probably more wide open throws for the quarterback. Because the defender has a less chance of batting it down or intercepting it because he has that quickness. So I say that to say, whenever you're building a company or you're looking for people, it's not about looking for a certain profile of people. It's about being like, okay, it's a passion there. Do you love what you're doing? And what are the very unique attributes that we don't have here in the company that now we can make sure we check that box off, so when the situations arise where it's needed, we have it. So as I look at recruiting at StatusPro, what I typically look for are how can I align what somebody's experience already is, the things that I can see that they care about when I talk to them, where is their passion, and does that align for what we're doing at StatusPro? The same way I just talked about the alignment of goals, I want to align passions as well. So we have a number of people at StatusPro who are former athletes that might also be great marketers, that might also be great creatives, that might also be great engineers, great producers. And the reason for that is because you might have gone to college to play baseball and you ended up being a systems engineer, and you've been working in systems engineering for forever, but you still have that itch to be a part of sports because you grew up in the locker room. You grew up practicing. You grew up where everything mattered, and that's how you got to college in the first place. So if I can align those two things to be like, hey, guess what? I bet you never thought you'd have a place where your baseball experience is just as important as your engineering experience. And to somebody in that situation, it's like, oh, this company was built for me. It aligns my entire life experience. And ultimately, what everybody wants in anything that they put time into is they want it to matter, right? So you want to make sure whether you made it to the major leagues or not, well, now you're in a role where that baseball experience matters. It wasn't for naught. It completes the story. And so that's what I look for in recruiting. How do I align those passions? And that doesn't have to be as a player. It could be you worked in Nike. It could be you wrote for Slam Magazine for 20 years or 15 years or 10 years or Dime Mag, like whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that experience of writing about the culture of and one back in the day. And it's like, well, now there's a job where I could do all these things. You know, I look for passions like that because it's going to give us an accelerator. And we're probably going to, although it's a team of 45, we're going to probably operate and have an impact where it feels like the company's a lot bigger.
Oh, yeah. And so, like, let's hit the pause button here for a second. I could talk to you about NFL football all day.
Of course.
But if you're listening to this, you're like, what is StatusPro?
Yeah.
And how does Andrew Hawkins go from this obsessed with football, competitive athlete to now running a VR video game?
Yeah.
So, like, that's what StatusPro is, you know,
Yep.
for anybody that doesn't know. You know, career ends. You said your body's not doing it anymore. How do you, like, what's next? How does this happen?
Yeah. So StatusPro, sports and entertainment technology company that builds immersive experiences
Right.
that allow fans, coaches, players to see the game from the perspective of the players, right? That's like the top line mission statement. So how do you get there? It is still that I love football. That's the absolute. That is where this started. That's where it will end. You know, no matter what success looks like, it is that I have always been an athlete. I have always been a competitor. And no matter what level of football that I got to, it was a data point that I wanted to leverage when I was done. So I talked about how when I got done with college, it was like this period of 2 to 3 years that it took me to get my first NFL opportunity. And so I understood at that point that this could be ripped away from you at any moment. But also, you're putting so much time into this. All those 5 a.m. workouts I was telling you about, or running routes by myself, or, you know, trying to study the game from a scout's perspective, from a coach's perspective, from a player's perspective. How can I leverage what this experience has been for me to make sure it continues to carry me after my playing career is done? So it started while I was a player. I got introduced to, you know, augmented reality, XR, which is virtual reality, extended reality. And I thought, man, that would be really cool if NFL players could train regular people virtually. So imagine an augmented reality version of Russell Wilson teaching a quarterback in their own backyard, that basically you can scale that expertise that every high school kid is clamoring for. Like, I want to talk to the NFL guys, right? And so that was like the original of it. And I'm like, man, this could be it. It was like 2015-ish. I was in the middle of my career. I would speak every year at the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. And I'm like, man, there's nobody doing this. And this could be an opportunity to own sports in this category. And I'm like, nobody's thinking about this. Well, I think I did an article in maybe the Sports Business Journal or Sportico. Like, I forget which platform it was, but it was a writer by the name of Joe Lemire. And so he had also done a recent article about this startup company in Baltimore who was trying to go into training and augmented reality and VR. So I read the article and I'm like, I reach back out to the writer, like, hey, can you connect me? Make a long story short, connected me. And the person running the sports strategy and taking that company into sports was a guy by the name of Troy Jones, who was also a former Division I quarterback. He played in college. He worked at the NFL Players Association. And I think that's where we first, you know, kind of known of each other. Long story short, we connected on this vision of where we thought this technology could be in 10 years, which seemed like 100 years away at that point. And we were like, okay, well, let's just kind of stay in touch. So what year was this?
What year was this?
2016.
Okay.
2016. And so at the time, my career was coming to a close. I started to work at Uninterrupted at Spring Hill. I was the head of business development there for those guys after I retired. You know, I graduated from Columbia with my master's degree, which I was doing in the off season. And so I was just very focused on like making sure my transition was as seamless as it could be.
That's crazy, man.
Which
so
is
you
tough.
were an NFL player in the off season getting your master's.
Yep.
So we were trying to figure out like how you had time for all this stuff. You know?
So the last 3 years of my career, the first year train in Tampa, and then every week I would load all my classes into one day. And so I would fly up first thing in the morning from Tampa to New York, have all my classes, and take the last flight home back to Tampa. The next 2 years I was in LA. So I would do the same thing. I'd wake up Monday morning, fly across the country, land at like 1:30, load my classes up till 10, and be on the 10:30 flight from JFK back to LA the same day.
Wow.
So I would do that every week in the off season. At the same time, I was interning for Uninterrupted Spring Hill and Mav Carter, and also training in the off seasons from LA. So it was not easy, but it did set me up for basically I've been doing the same thing for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Basically every week commuting across the country.
Yeah.
But the idea was that I needed to make sure people understood how focused I was, how hard I worked. I didn't need them to question whether I was smart enough to be able to help their businesses, and a Columbia degree would do exactly that, in my opinion. So I'm getting done, and again, Troy and I are having these conversations, and then eventually in 2019, it was like, yo, let's just bring these visions together. The name of his company was Mixed River, and they had transitioned into Bike Cubed, and I was building the brand of StatusPro and like kind of how I envisioned it, and we just like, yo, from scratch, let's bring it together and build this out, because we both had a love for football. We both had a passion for helping athletes like ourselves. We had a passion for showing fans what it was actually like to be there. I've always imagined what it could be like to be a quarterback or play in the NFL. And I'm like, this type of technology will allow us to take people on that roller coaster. And so from training, media, to gaming, it was like, let's build this ecosystem where we're showing everybody what it's like. We're going to remove the last level of access that most fans think they would never see. You would never think you would know what it's like to play in Gillette Stadium. Well, now we can build an experience for you to do so. And so 2019, we brought it together and officially launched the new version of StatusPro. And here we are 5 years later.
So my question with all of that is, you're a future caster. You see this awesome vision for bringing these experiences to people. And I think a lot of people have maybe the ability to like come up with good ideas like this, right? But then they're always intimidated by like, oh, I don't have this skill set. And not for nothing, you're not talking about, some traditional product here. Yeah. If you think about like the craziest things happening in 2024, what are people talking about? It's like AI, it's crypto, it's VR, AR type stuff, right? Yeah. And that's very tech heavy. That's super intimidating. So, you talked about it earlier where you future cast and you're like, this is the next step. This was my path to the NFL. How does somebody with no background building stuff like this draw up the board of like, I'm going to start a company that's built around one of these extremely tech heavy products? Yeah. And like,
So I think it does have ties to my football career and also Troy's football career. Because we have a very similar story. Yeah. I went to play in the NFL. But he also, went from no scholarships to walk on to junior college to being one of the top rated JUCO quarterbacks and going to play Division I level. That's rare. It's rare to be a Division I quarterback. It's a hard thing to accomplish. And so I think our shared ability to do exactly what I talked about in my playing career is what set us up for this. So on the surface, it's like, I'm not an engineer by trade, right? I did not come from gaming and AR or VR. In the same way Bill Belichick was not an NFL player, right? Because how did Bill Belichick become Bill Belichick? Bill Belichick put in not only his 10,000 hours, he put in his 999,000 hours, right? To where, he's never played, but there's not a player in the world who will tell Bill Belichick, well, you don't get it. Why? Because Bill Belichick wakes up thinking about football. He goes to sleep researching football. He can have a recall from plays of 50 years ago, whether he was a coach or before his time, because he spends the time to actually learn and study and make sure there's no stone unturned to make him the de facto expert. And I think it's very similar in tech. Like, no, I'm not an engineer, but if you spend enough time in a medium, learning, understanding, especially a medium that is still niche, where there's not a lot of expertise, there's overlap from different things. But the experience of VR, AR, XR is completely different than console gaming. It's completely different than anything you see in tech and the media. And so we've spent so much time just educating ourselves, understanding it, taking chances, learning, putting ourselves in positions to where now we do feel like we know this better than anybody else. And we have a product that is one of the most successful in VR history. So that does make us now the de facto experts. But at the beginning stage of it, if you're the kind of person who is willing to put the time in, and not even the cliche version. If you're the kind of person who can wake up at 5 a.m. when there's no indication you're going to get an NFL contract and still train, lift, study film, watch football, read everything you can, hear from coaches, hear from scouts of what they're looking for in players. If you can do that, you can also go into a new medium of tech and do the same exact thing where it looks crazy on the outset.
Yeah.
There is no tie through to a receiver for a 1-15 Browns team to co-founding one of the best virtual reality studios that there ever has been on these platforms. But they also aren't there when you're waking up early, right? And if you're going to get as many people like that, to also your point about building your team, when you get as many people like that, and it might not be a million of them out there, but I don't need a million. You know, I need Troy. Troy needs a Hawk. And then we got to go get 43 other people that are like the Troys and like the Hawks. And then we might be able to build something where people are going to look back and say, damn, I didn't see how that happened, but now it's a fact. Very similar to the NFL career we talked about.
I've been trying to wrap my head around just like the VR landscape. Because I think I'm a person who's mostly held off on VR because most of the times I pick it up, I'm like, all right, like it's better. And like at some point, like I'm going to be all in on this, but like I've kind of pushed it off. I feel like it's getting to the point now where it's like, I need to have one of these things. But like, I also still don't get, it's not ubiquitous yet, you know? So I don't know, like
long shot.
Like the way iPhone, Apple, Android, Google, or like, you know, PlayStation, Microsoft, Xbox, like there's a hardware, there's hardware centers, there's like software development centers, and there's distribution, right? So like, what's the landscape right now? I know you guys are in like certain stores, and you have like, how does it all work?
So right now, Meta is the leader with the Quest headset, and we've been partners with them for years, making sure our consumer game is on that platform. But it is tracking towards ubiquity, and the reason why I say that, it's, in my opinion, it's inevitable. Now, will StatusPro be here if it takes 20 years? I don't know. I have no idea. You can't forecast that out. But what I do know is you have to be able to look for the indicators in the market, which is Google and Samsung are investing heavily into it. That's public information. Apple is investing heavily into it, and they're calling it the future. That's public information. Meta is doing that. Microsoft is doing that. Sony is doing that, right? And typically when you have that kind of alignment in technology, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You can't dictate when the win happens, but you have enough there to say, okay, I know where this is going. And so for us, our job is to give the use cases for guys like yourself to say, well, where's the benefit now? How do we pull that future a little bit closer in whatever domain in the overarching XR that we've decided to make ours? And so for us, it's football, or it's sports, it's baseball, it's basketball, it's anything like that. And no, we might not be able to sell you on, you might not be an early technology adopter, and every time something comes out, you want to jump into it. So what we sell is, hey, 45-year-old, you know, man or woman, have you ever wondered what it's like to play in the NFL? It has nothing to do with technology. Do you love the Patriots? You want to see what Tom Brady has to
deal with,
take in and process while he's on the field? Here, try this. And that is what sports fans understand. And I think that's where we've had our success early on, is because we have a way to basically turn people into XR users that aren't early tech adopters. We've just debuted our ESPN product, where Dan Orlovsky, who is one of the best analysts in all of sports, he uses our product and what we call our Pro Era Visualizer, where we can take plays that happened on Sunday, mix it with the next gen stats data and the technology we built, and we can basically show you the recreation of that play from a first person perspective, whether it's the quarterback, receiver, defensive back on any given play. And so Dan has gone on television on NFL Live at ESPN and broken down these plays of what a quarterback is seeing. And I think we've done it at this point 3 weeks in a row, and it's done 1 million views on social in less than 24 hours each time. And that tells me, and people's perspective is like, man, I've never seen what a quarterback's vision looks like on a play. This is the first time ever. And anytime you have something in sports where a fan who loves it can say that they've never experienced that, that's how you know you have something special. And just like that, we just turned 3 million people into XR users like yourself who might not even have a headset.
Yeah.
You know, so it's taking advantage of opportunities like that and looking for more ways to innovate to maybe, you know, it's not as straight line as make everybody buy a headset. How can we get creative to make sure everyone can see the value just of what we're building?
So what needs to happen for Pro Era to sell as many copies as something like that?
I need you to go buy a headset. That's what that's what it is.
What are we
talking about? Go and then go tell your friends to buy a headset.
So that's
right?
But is that the bottleneck for you? Is like distribution of the hardware so that like
I
people
think
have
the bigger the total addressable market, the bigger the opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And so as that continues to grow, like we would love it to accelerate.
Yeah.
There's been ebbs and flows where some holiday seasons it's huge, sometimes it comes down, then it jumps back up depending on what hardware is available and price points and where we are economically, because how people spend their disposable income also ties to that. But I think for us, yes, it's more people getting the headset or figuring out more ways to show people what the possibilities are. That's the really cool part about what we've done with the Disney Accelerator that we were in this year and the subsequent ESPN contract that we signed to put it on distribution is like people are still seeing it for the first time. There are so many sports fans that we know will be subscribers to what we're doing if they know it's out there.
Yeah.
And so we're looking for more and more opportunities to do that because it will directly tie to headset sales, which, you know, then fall down to Pro Era sales on the gaming front. Maybe teams see it and use it more on the training side as well as more broadcast.
Yeah.
Say, this is the only way to get a first-person perspective, and we got to make sure we use it and find the cool ways to use this tool.
Yeah. So can you walk somebody through what that experience really is like? Because VR, AR to most people is still like just confusing. It's like, oh, I'm gonna play football in a room. How does that happen? So I think if I'm playing quarterback and I'm making reads and throws, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then, but if you want to play corner, like how do you do that? And like I watch the YouTube videos. You know, I see these dudes. I see dudes go out to the football field, play corner, like running around the field.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But can you break that down for us? Because I think it still confuses.
It is confusing, especially if you haven't done it. But it's no more confusing than if you've never played football.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I put you on the field and told you to play quarterback, it would be a lot more confusing than doing it in our game. Right? And even if you can understand, okay, get the ball, throw it to one of my guys. If I then tell you to go guard the receiver, that's going to be even more confusing because it's a little harder on you athletically. And gaming is the same way. Like gaming was rudimentary at one point. Madden was like just, run here, run there. Tecmo Super Bowl was run left, zigzag for a touchdown. Well, now you're damn near Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay and like, oh, well, it's the cover 2 shell. I got to make sure I'm hitting, the deep seam. If it's Tampa, well, here's the holes in the defense. And if I don't call this play, it's not going to work. Like it gets to that level of sophistication. And so for us, it's, the quarterback made the most sense because obviously they have the ball every play and it's a stationary position in VR. And then as we've developed, now we're in year 3. Now we've been able to add defensive elements as well, where you can hit, you can intercept, you can guard people, and people are now a little bit more advanced in their controls because they've been playing it for a couple of years. And also it's really intuitive to young people. Like that's the other part about the platform is I think there's value for every age demographic, but the people, when we go to these live events or we get people inside the experience, someone my age, I have to say, okay, here's how you stand. Here's how you measure off what your area is so you don't, run out of there. These controls are here, point and do this. And then we'll get an 11-year-old or a 13-year-old that has never touched a VR headset in their life. We'll put it on and we'll be like, hey, so this is, nope, I got it. And immediately they have it, you know? And so I think just over time is, again, people have more exposure for the people in my age demographic or older. It's like you put more time in and then other things, much like a cell phone, 2-year-olds know how to use cell phones. I remember when the iPhone came out. And it was like, man, this is so stupid. There's no buttons on it. Like it's so hard to type text messages on a screen, whereas now like babies can do that, you know, so that this will be the same thing. And that's what happens with new technology.
Where is the technology? I know people, when they think of virtual reality, they think like, Ready Player One and then they have to be brought back down to earth. Like we're nowhere near this.
Yeah.
Like, for you, as somebody who's living this stuff, where do you see the ceiling?
I mean, again, I'm biased because I feel like this is, especially from a gaming perspective, but there's so many use cases that just aren't tapped. I feel like it's only 5% of the promised land being built. And the thing that I think truly even brought us in from a gaming perspective is because it's not about us being gaming people. Here's what we have a value proposition of is we are building a world that only we know, or we know better than anybody else. I don't care what company comes along. You're not going to be able to paint the world of an NFL player like I can, because you know what it took for me to get there. And I remember every single damn detail. I remember my first time stepping on the field. I remember the tears coming down. I remember the Jets flying over when the national anthem played. I remember what the fans would say when I'm in the tunnel, or they would make fun of me. And I didn't get mad. I thought it was cool. I'm like, yo, look at me. I'm like,
it's the best.
I'm getting heckled.
Ultimate,
yo, look at me.
Ultimate compliment.
I remember what the sideline felt like. I remember seeing, Troy Aikman on the sideline as a broadcaster, and everybody acting like that was no big deal. And I'm like, holy shit, that's Troy Aikman. I remember these details, as does Troy. And so it's a world building in an immersive space. So you can watch Spider-Man, and we can, Marvel can show you what it's like from the perspective of a 14-year-old kid from Brooklyn named Miles Morales. And over time throughout that film, you start to relate to him, and you understand what he goes through, because they just built a world for you, and they built you with his parents and what he's dealing with, in school, or all the things. And I think for us in VR, it is the same thing, but it's even to a different level, because now we can put you behind the eyes of any hero. We can make you Tom Brady. Somebody's going to make you Batman. Someone can make you Mookie Betts, right? From sports to superheroes, like we are giving you, eventually you will be behind the eyes of Beyonce, and you'll see, oh, this is what it's like to perform in front of 90,000 people, or Taylor Swift. And so this is like a very rare medium to me, because it truly engrosses you into a world where no other medium can. And so that's what I think the ultimate value proposition is.
So football is the start. And as a founder, how do you think about, the studio as a whole versus like we need to nail football, and football needs to smack, I know you guys have plans to do all these things. How do you layer that, and how do you kind of
that's
like,
the
okay, we're ready,
question, man. That's the toughest part about like in startup culture in general, right? Because you're trying to conquer the world, and you're trying to also constantly be proving to, boards and investors and fans and platforms that this is, something that is worth continuing to invest in, but also that people are starting to see the vision. And a lot of times companies will start to do more before they've nailed the singular thing that is giving them some kind of indicator of success. And so for me, I'm like, there's still a lot of meat on the bone in football. There's a lot of worlds, and that's it. Again, there's no better illustration of that than what we've just done on the media side, where we've taken our product, we've kind of kept 70% of it, developed some portions of it to make it fit a new medium, and now millions of people are seeing it for the first time. So there's more meat on the bone. There's more goals to be met there, where we want to truly own the game of football. And when the time comes, and when the time is right to expand, it'll come, but it probably doesn't happen before everybody understands when you think of XR and the game of football, you think of the word StatusPro immediately or simultaneously.
And you just raised a round. You got that Google Ventures round. The announcement hit. It's public info.
Yeah. That's a while ago now, I feel like. So.
Yeah, it is. So what's the plan now? Like, what are the growth opportunities? You got a bunch of capital coming in.
Yeah.
Like, what can you do now that you couldn't do a year ago?
And I mean, I think we've built a brand equity that we didn't have a while ago, right? And like, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to hire talent. You need resources, you need the money to do so, and you need a brand equity to make somebody say, well, it's worth me jumping from whatever big company to then come here, because it's viable and it has staying power. So I think number one is that talent. Number two is, as any startup, you're doing a lot with a little. and you're being very resourceful. You're being efficient. You know, as the old saying goes, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul type of thing, and you're pulling here, and it's like, oh, you have to make certain. You have to negotiate between, should I do this, and maybe I take this down a little bit, maybe I invest a little bit more in this way, because at the moment, this is the most pressing need. This is the baby that needs the most food right now. And I think with an investment, we're able to start to build on top of that. So you will start to see this ecosystem start to come together a little bit more than it has. But also with the investment, it was, okay, well, let's kick the tires on what other sports look like, what other sports make sense, what is the market for people who are in VR, who are those headset adopters and monthly active users. What sport do they want to see next?
Yeah.
What is the experience that they're looking for? What has the best form factor in VR? Quarterback is great. It is probably a little tougher to play corner in VR. It's a little tougher to play certain sports because the back and forth and the changing of perspective, the medium and platform isn't quite there yet. But there are sports that are more stationary by nature that could be great fits for what the platform is. And so that's what I think the investment goes into, is like, making sure we're testing that out, but also continuing to own the space that we've created.
Yeah. I can't wait to see baseball, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing as, Tom Brady. Like, I have no appreciation for standing in the pocket, and like how fast these guys are and how big they are, and they're coming after you.
Yep.
And I'm trying to calculate all that stuff. It blows my mind.
And there's some great baseball. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of Win Reality.
No, I haven't.
It's a training
company.
I
have. Yeah, I have.
That they don't do gaming, but they do like literal baseball training, and MLB players use it.
Yep.
It is a great form factor for baseball. I will say that.
Yeah.
That's what the platform is.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the same thing as you're talking about. It's the experience of like, wow, that's good enough for somebody to train with. Then I'm getting a real, like, that's what Verlander's heater looks like.
Yep.
That's crazy. Can't wait to see that. Is there anything else that like you think is a good? I guess golf is probably pretty stationary.
Yeah, golf is great. There's a great golf game there as well. Like, it's when you talk about the best sports experiences in VR, it is Golf Plus. It is Win Reality, which is training, and it is Pro Era in my estimation. Like, those are kind of the big three on the platform.
So how did it go down with console and the major sports titles? There's 2K. There's MLB The Show. You got Madden, right? And some of them are coming from the same studios over the years, and some of them are like independent. And you're owning football right now. Do you feel like Win Reality is going to eat my lunch on baseball if I don't get going, or is it like
No, I think it is like you. I mean, the market will tell you, right? Again, like we know we do better than everybody else's football, and we also are creative enough to create the experiences that we still haven't done yet. So it's like that becomes the main focus. And also we're so positioned in sports because of the backgrounds that we've had and the exposure that we've had across the market. Like, I don't want to understate how incredible it is that we have NFL license. We're the only other simulation football game outside of Madden in the last 20 years. Nobody else has had it. 2K had it a long time ago before Madden got the exclusive, and we've been able to create a whole new license category that it was not there, and that was not easy.
Yeah.
Of all the things we talked about, the hardest thing that I've ever had to do, along with my co-founder, Troy Jones, was us getting the NFL to give a simulation license to a startup company that had never built a video game before.
Yeah.
That's a risk. Yeah. And there was a lot of that went into that. It was over a 2-year process. But the result is we've launched 3 versions of the game, all 4+ stars, right? So it has worked out in that way, but that's what we know. We were positioned to do that. I genuinely believe nobody else would have been able to do that, except for Troy and I and our company. And so, again, more indicators for us to say we have something special. We're doing something that nobody else has done, can do, and we'd be foolish to step away from that too early before we make sure we maximize what the opportunity looks like.
Yeah. I mean, the license is huge, and we have an appreciation for that at JDS, where we see startups that have this sports-related idea where it's just like, 10% as cool as it could be if it was fully licensed.
Yep.
And you kind of sit there and root for the founders to be able to achieve the license. If it's the NBA or the NBPA, like, maybe we can help because we have a good relationship with them. Right. But that's a really hard thing to do, is to get this mega asset to trust you with what you're doing. And, part of the show is Inside Moves, right? It's like JDS Sports, like our POV on investing. I don't do a great job of like remembering to throw in my own input, like just listening. But I think that's a lesson right there as an investor is like if you can get if you're a startup and you can go convince the existing establishments in the industry you're going into to license, partner, do these things with you, like that's kind of your moat and like the beginning of, okay, this has some staying power, this has some real potential. They're getting trusted by people that are also, dotting their I's and crossing their T's before they just go trust this. And that was for us, like, okay, we love all this and like we have to invest in it.
The thing I like about JDS, and obviously we've talked to investors across the board, and especially as every sports, quote unquote, sports investor claims they know the industry better than anybody else. But what happens is a lot of times as an operator, like there's unrealistic expectations of what that actually means to bring to life. This is not easy. This is hard. Not only that, you might do everything right and you just might not be the right person.
Totally.
And so there is elements to that to navigate. And again, the thing that I love about JDS is that they've had experience with it across the board and dealing with at every level from a player like Slam. Like I grew up reading Slam and just looking for opportunities, right? And so to understand it from a player perspective, with the players, the front office, the league, all, like operators, investing, there are just very few actual investors in the sports space that get all those perspectives. And honestly, that's what drew us to being a part of the family in the first place, because it's just, even as time goes on, people that you thought that you wanted to invest early on that may have passed, like we're like, man, thank God that we don't have to be explaining things to them because they don't know, right? It's like we would have been teaching them about this space, and you just don't. JDS is not like that, which is cool. Yeah.
I think that's another lesson for like early founders, where if you don't get me wrong, if you don't have capital, you can't live. Like you need to take in money, and you need to go do what you're doing, and you can't always draw that up perfectly. But if you really believe in your product and you can sell it, really think hard about who's coming on your cap table, because like a lot of these people, we always say like we don't want to be just capital, we want to be capital plus, right? And the reality is like, and I'm not saying this to call anybody out or think of anybody in particular, not even my own personal experience, but anecdotes I hear from founders often are they weren't just capital, they were capital minus, because it was like they're distracting, they're whatever, and
the majority, this is, again, I'm going to speak from a founder perspective, the majority of people in this space are capital minus. And that's like for operators. Because there's just a lot of things that I don't think people consider, right? And to your point, you get in really tough moments. It's hard in the startup business. It is hard. You go through a bunch of different issues, and especially as you pertain to sports, because we're a company that's operating between like 10 different $1 trillion companies. And we have 45 people. And we're in a space that there is no like history in. Like, so we're building the plane as we're in the air, and that's hard for some investors to qualify, because they're like, oh, what? Nobody's an expert here. Like ourselves, yourself, like we're building the expertise right now. When people leave our company, they're going to be the experts because we're the first to do these things. And what you want from an investor, in my perspective, is like, I can call JDS and we can have a real conversation. It doesn't have to, it gets to the nuts and bolts damn near immediately. And it's like, man, if I were you, I would do this. Oh, that makes sense. This is tough. Well, it might be someone you're trying to connect to. It might just be someone who has a sounding board that can say, well, as an operator, I understand you trying, and we've dealt with that with this company. They've gone through this. Here's how they did it right. Here's how they did it wrong, because you're in a space where nobody else has any kind of expertise. So, that's tough for a lot of investors, to your point. I mean, Matt and PRC, man, and Joe, like they really do. They're so generous with their time. And I think they, like the same way, like, you love getting up at 5 a.m. and grinding for football. Like they love those hard challenges, like obviously they don't love the stress or like whatever the negatives are of it, but they understand it's like meaningful, and I agree. They like the challenge of it. And watching them, it's good for me, finding meaning in my job and walking away from sports. Be like, dude, these guys kind of have the same, that drive and mindset that athletes have.
Yeah, they're good at it for sure.
And they think for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? I think a lot of things that happen with investors is, everyone's following a specific playbook. And like, we've dealt with it. It's like, oh, this person comes in, like nobody wants to invest. The moment you get the right person to come in, now all the people want to send their check, right? They follow in that way, and there's a lack of conviction. And there's some you got to make sure that the right people are a part of it. But what I love about JDS is that, and this is me having talked to them about other investments outside of StatusPro, they're looking under every rug for they can see the vision for any medium in sports because of that knowledge we talked about. And they're not following on what everybody else is doing. It's like, well, I see the value of this niche business in this way because here's how it sticks out.
Yeah.
And when we run our company, that's how we know we're on the right track.
Yeah.
Not because we're doing what somebody else has done.
Right.
More because we're the only people doing it our way.
Right.
And we're having success because we are the de facto experts. And that's how JDS kind of, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're unique. And like a lot of the negative things that I think people would have to say about the venture industry, like aren't necessarily the people running those firms' fault. It's just kind of like the way the industry is structured,
I agree.
That's why we have great people. Like that's number one. Number two, we have somewhat of an advantage in the way that we're structured, not having a pension fund on our as an LP that has a 5-year expectation of performance and like. Things get different when you do it that way, and there's pros and cons to that. But like we've kind of owned, I think, who we are, the speed that we move at, and like the flexibility, and that's what I think they've gotten really good at is over the last 5 years, 6 years as we've been investing, really like knowing who we are and sticking to the strengths and playing to them. And we have great relationships with founders. We really do. Yeah. All right, man. You got a busy. So before you leave, I guess you also while you're doing all this, you have time to be like a full contributor to ESPN's NFL department.
That's my part-time job.
Part-time job. So how do you manage all that time?
I just work all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, quite literally.
Yeah. Do you ever get tired?
I guess so.
Yeah.
But it's athletes, man.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to be tired.
Yeah, you're going to be tired.
That's how you build endurance.
Yeah. I like it. That's like my dad, man. He does so many things. I won't even get into all of it, but I look at him like he's 64 now, and I'm like, how do you do it? And he's like, this is life, man. This is fun, and he kind of tricks himself into like this is the only way, and he loves it, And
I love it, man. I talk to your dad.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
My dad's cool, man. He's cool, but. All right, man. I won't keep you much longer. I know you got a busy schedule. Thank you so much for flying up from Florida, trying to get to ESPN studio, finding time in between all these different things that you're doing to come on my little podcast.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you guys' patience, and this is dope. I'll be excited to see it out in the world.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to see Pro Era put out some baseball.
Let's go. Let's go.